rumors that Karine Jean-Pierre might be shown the door or conveniently moved over to a different role, maybe in the new campaign for president for the Biden team. Questions came up on Fox News. They were asking themselves whether she was going to be around much longer, given the fact that she has a very difficult time, answering questions, which is a primary responsibility for her job. Is Karine Jean-Pierre going to be shown the door soon?
KJP. So I asked you earlier, how much longer can KJP bob and weave on this topic? Next question, how much longer does KJP have in this role?
I would think probably within the next couple of months, we'll see a pivot to John Kirby as the White House press secretary, particularly if Joe Biden announces he's running for president. If he does announce, then KJP has, or Karine Jean-Pierre has an out, right? All right, she'll be the communications director for the campaign type of thing. But John Kirby should have had this job right after Jen Psaki left, not Karine Jean-Pierre. And particularly in this case, because remember, these are national security implications in these classified documents. So Kirby, coming from the Pentagon as their spokesperson, should be out there a lot more than Karine Jean-Pierre. But at this point, I can't even watch these press briefings anymore. If I have to hear one more time that the president takes classified documents very seriously, which somebody's been tallying online, I think we're up to 35 times she said that.
Bingo.
I'm sorry. It's like everything's being played on a loop at this point,
yeah,
guys.
That may be.
It's brutal. It's like a brutal thing. Round and around we go with Karine Jean-Pierre. It's just nonstop. And so we ask ourselves, is she going to be around much longer? There's a new individual who entered the game who might be a replacement. His name is Ian Sams. And evidently he was one of the Biden team members who was first brought into the loop, a spokesman for Biden's White House counsel's office. And he was out over the weekend communicating his position and speaking on behalf of the president, hitting the media airwaves. This is Ian Sams on with MSNBC explaining Biden's documents to the press.
Can you give us a sense of how many classified documents we are now talking about total across all three locations?
Sure. It's a good question. And actually, the answer to it is a little bit complicated because of this point that I'm making about the integrity of an ongoing Justice Department investigation. The Justice Department is going to be looking at all sorts of questions like that throughout their investigation. We want to be very, very careful to be respectful of the integrity of that investigation, to not speak too much about the underlying contents and materials, especially things that we may not know all the answers to.
Okay, so he's basically the same thing. Exactly the same thing as her, right? It's not. Was that any different? Did he say anything any different? That's an ongoing investigation. We can't talk about this. It's a very simple question. How many documents? Is it a binder of documents? Is it a box of documents? Did they look like the boxes that was at Mar-a-Lago? What are they individual sheets of paper? Are the papers printed on front and back? We'd like to know all of that. But they've been very, very obscure about this. They don't want to tell you that because it's probably a bunch of documents, unfortunately for them, and they don't want you to know about it. So he is basically saying the exact same thing. So I'm not sure that Karine Jean-Pierre's job is in any harm or any threat. Here's another clip from Ian Sams, who tells us that the president takes it seriously, which is exactly what Karine says.
And so, Ian, my question is, again, because some of these papers are found that are related to the president's tenure as vice president, and even going back to his 36 years in the United States Senate, a lot of people are wondering, how is that possible? There are rules in place for the handling of classified documents. So how is he in this situation?
Well, I think you heard the president's lawyers speak to this exact fact, and you heard the president speak to this fact. You know, he was made aware of this by his lawyers, and I think that there's a really important distinction here. You know, he is proactively cooperating here because he takes it seriously. He wants the DOJ to conduct a thorough review.
Because when he was in possession of those documents, he didn't have any legal authority to do that. Like, they have to come and do all of that. That's why he takes it seriously. But they haven't changed anything. They haven't communicated anything. They're not altering how the White House handles classified documents. So he has no regrets. Ian Sam explains that one as well. But why did the president say he had no regrets, though? I mean, this is the fourth batch of documents. Certainly now he has regrets, right?
Let me ask you about the president's own words. He has said no regrets on this matter. What does he mean when he says no regrets?
Sure. Well, I think it's really important to take the soundbite and understand the context. He was asked a question by a reporter about the disclosure publicly of this information. I think that he was asked specifically, do you regret not disclosing this information to the public earlier? And I think that the answer, and of course he said he had no regrets, and the answer is because he's been promptly, his team, his legal team, has been promptly disclosing information to the proper authorities as a part of an ongoing investigation.
All right, so he is a little bit of a better communicator than Karine. You see what he did there is he took the question that was based on a premise that was bad, and then he sort of rewrapped it around with a bunch of additional context, changed the question into something that he wanted to answer, which was about the process after the documents were discovered. Okay, she was asking, does he have regrets about taking the documents? And he didn't answer that question. He said, oh, that's a really bad question for me. So let me go ahead and change that. And he changed the question about to does he have any regrets about the process, which is not what she asked at all, obviously, but he didn't want to answer her question. He wanted to answer his question. So he just answered his question and it sounded pretty good. Karine Jean-Pierre could learn something from this fella. He's not as bad as she is at this. Let's take a look at one final clip from him. Ian Sams.
Has the FBI searched the president's home in Rehoboth, Delaware?
So I'm going to be very careful here not to speak ahead of potential investigative steps by the DOJ. We're in full cooperation with them. The president's lawyers, White House counsel's office, we're being totally cooperative with DOJ as they move ahead on this. So I want to be very careful not to talk about potential investigative steps. But I think
he's got the same script. I think they just took out the Karine Jean-Pierre chip and they just inserted it right into this guy. She needed a break, so they just shut her off for a couple minutes.
It's important to know that, the president's lawyers are talking with DOJ, are being cooperative as they ask for material or information, and that's going to continue. That's consistent with the president's commitment from the very beginning.
So then you're not going to answer the next question, which was, has the White House already given DOJ access to that house now that the Wilmington search has been
definitely not answering that either.
I think the statements that the president's personal lawyers put out last weekend, for example, noted that they have been in coordination with DOJ throughout this search process. Those are discussions that are happening between the personal lawyers and the DOJ. We want to be really careful not to speak ahead of any of those steps.
Because they don't want to answer any questions. So that poor host, he's like, all right, so he should have just said, so what are you doing here at all? Probably should have looked at his producer. Who is this person? He's not answering anything. If I wanted a guest that didn't answer any questions at all, we would have booked Karine Jean-Pierre. I wanted somebody who's going to answer something, and this guy evidently won't. So, all right, we'll see if Karine Jean-Pierre becomes also obsolete and joins the likes of Ron Klain. We'll, of course, continue to cover it.